that people has lost for some time. And that fact is such a big burden for us. And almost 2 years passed by, and we know that people are pretty much discouraged or disappointed of how little the Parliament can do just to pass the laws or just to provide a check and balance to bring government. And of course, you're right to be disappointed, and I feel you. I feel your frustration. But the parliamentary opposition has not been so effective as it should be. Many bills that we sponsored, we proposed a bill to end the military conscription, the bill like labor protection bill were aborted together with one of the bill from Thai to create the SME Council were aborted by the Prime Minister. As you can see, the motion censure debates, the budget bill debates, the constitutional amendment debate could not make the government budge a single step toward any reforms. So, but we know that that was a deck that stacked against us. At the beginning, the opposition parties, coalition, we started from 245 seats from 7 parties, but now 210 from only 6 parties. Our party, my own party, our party seats have been decreased from above 80, and now we just got 53 right now. And of course, we were disbanded, and we have to move from Future Forward Party to Move Forward Party. The Prime Minister can terminate the financial bills, as I mentioned before. The Constitutional Court just took away our subpoena power back in October. And there are a lot more. The anti-graft authorities' decision has set a norm that lent for use and return to original form. It's totally illegal. It's totally legal, just to protect someone who is the heart of the military regime. And even if we can get anything through the House of Representatives, but no meaningful change can happen because we have to get it through the 250 junta-appointed senators. As you can see from the case of the constitutional amendment process, or many reform bills that we have to pass together with the joint meetings of the House of Representatives and House of Senate. This sounds desperate, right? But we think that we have done pretty good so far for the 2 years. We have escalated the level of debate inside the Parliament. We have done our pretty good job on the censure debate, even though we couldn't convince any of the MP from the government side. However, even when the current Parliament is kneecapped by Prayut regimes that I would call the Constitution, the independent bodies and stuff, we are, as a opposition MPs, I think the parliamentary system is still our hope for this country to get out of this political gridlock. It's the only place that can provide a safe space that people can, express their restricted opinions and to raise the level of the public debate to be discussed with something that couldn't quite often be discussed with maturity, with the evidence base, with the fact base. Of course, we see a lot of political movements outside of the Parliament, and it's of course it's a beauty of democracy, isn't it? And they are more free to do a lot of things that we couldn't. They may face less constraints that we have faced those unfair rules, but any real change can only be materialized through the legislation. So I think the parliamentary work, can go hand in hand with those outside of the parliament, and we can work together like in relay race, that we take turn to complete our own mission. So that's why we're still fighting this fight, and we're not giving up on hope. And we know full well that the path of progress is not a single straight line. And when the MPs of the Move Forward Party, including myself, decided to join politics like 2 years ago, we knew that those change was going to be hard, and we know that we would face some setbacks, and that's what we signed up for. Still, if someone was to tell me 2 years ago that Thai society would be where we are today in terms of societal discourse, I would say that it's impossible. But the change over the past few months, it's pretty shocking and dramatic, and the ground is shifting beneath our feet, and they have to choose. They're always the right side of the history to this kind of change, and I don't think it is in the best interest of the government side, the coalition parties, the senators, and Buru's government to make peaceful reform impossible. Thank you for this round.
Still some hope, right? Well, we go to our next speaker, คุณหมอเรวัต วิสุทธิเวชนะครับ from the Thai Liberal Party. I want to ask you, I mean, what do you see the way forward in terms of, parliamentary politics, considering what's going on, considering the protests, considering the taboos they are breaking? เรามองจากสถานการณ์ปัจจุบันการเมืองปัจจุบันนอกสภานะครับว่ามีการประท้วงมีการเกี่ยวกับพูดเรื่องประเด็นที่เซนซิทีฟต่างๆในสังคมไทยบทบาทของสภาในอนาคตเดินไปข้างหน้าคุณหมอมองยังไงครับ
คุณเป็นโรบินสันประธาน FCCT นะครับและสมาชิก FCCT เรื่องข่าวทั้งในและต่างประเทศทั้งในประเทศไทยและในต่างประเทศนะครับวันนี้ผมขอขอบคุณที่ได้เชิญให้เกียรติมาได้สัมมนาพูดคุยกันในวันนี้นะครับ
So first of all, I'm Gwen Robinson, the president of FCCT, and members of FCCT and fellow journalists from all over the world. And thank you for the opportunity. I'm very honored to be on this platform and express my views tonight.
สิ่งที่อยากจะพูดในวันนี้คงเป็นสิ่งที่ทุกท่านที่อยู่ในนี้สนใจก็คือเรื่องที่กำลังเกิดขึ้นในปัจจุบันนี้ซึ่งสโคปก็คงอยากจะพูดว่าเกิดอะไรขึ้นบ้างในสภากับเกิดอะไรขึ้นนอกสภาแล้วก็บทบาทที่นักเรียนนิสิตนักศึกษาประชาชนกำลังโปรเทสต์อยู่ในขณะนี้เนี่ยในฐานะของสสสมาชิกฝ่ายค้านเนี่ยจะสามารถช่วยอะไรได้บ้าง
So the phenomenon that we're going to discuss today is among the common interest in the society is the big change that is happening in front of our eyes, and then the scope of the discussion will be divided into what's happening inside the parliament, outside the parliament, and then we will see the context of the roles of the student protesters on the street, and with that brings us to the question, what will be the role of the opposition party and how we can help them.
ถ้าพูดถึงเหตุการณ์ในสภาเนี่ยก็คงจะต้องมี2เรื่องใหญ่ๆนะครับก็คือเรื่องที่เกี่ยวกับบัดเจ็ตบิลนะฮะซึ่งผ่านไปกับเรื่องของการแก้ไขรัฐธรรมนูญนะทั้ง2เรื่องได้รับความสนใจบัดเจ็ตบิลเนี่ยเราต่อสู้เต็มที่นะครับแม้ว่าเราจะไม่ชนะเสียงโหวตซึ่งแพ้ฝ่ายรัฐบาลแต่ว่าสิ่งที่เรายังทำได้ก็คือเราสามารถคว่ำเรือดำน้ำไม่ให้ซื้อได้เพราะว่าทหารเนี่ยจะซื้อเรือดำน้ำทำให้เศรษฐกิจซึ่งกำลังแย่อยู่แล้วประชาชนกำลังไม่มีจะกินเนี่ยนั่นคือแม้ว่าเราจะมีกำลังที่น้อยกว่าแต่เราก็สามารถส่งเสียงดังๆให้ประชาชนเนี่ยซัพพอร์ตเราให้สามารถยุติการซื้อเรือดำน้ำได้เพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยจึงอยากจะบอกกับทุกคนที่เป็นพรรคฝ่ายค้านเนี่ยสามารถจะร่วมมือกันแม้ว่าเสียงโหวตเราจะแพ้แต่เสียงอภิปรายของเราดังไปทั่วโลกครับ
So there are two main things that has been happening inside the parliament. The first one is the budget bill that just concluded, and then the issue of constitution amendment. And for the budget bill, even though we tried our best, even though we didn't win the vote, but we succeeded in stopping the submarine purchase from the government. And for that, it was a success to support the economy this time that people are struggling, and we stopped that large purchase for the submarines. So what I want to say is that even though we didn't win the vote, even though in terms of power we are not on the winning side, but with our collaboration we could work with the people and we could make the result that supported them.
เรื่องที่สองก็คือเรื่องของการแก้ไขรัฐธรรมนูญนะครับซึ่งมีการเสนอมา7 ฉบับนะและเราเน้นมากที่อยากจะให้ผ่านก็คือร่างของภาคประชาชนหรือที่เรียกว่าไอลอเพราะว่าร่างฉบับนี้เป็นร่างที่เหมือนกับเป็นอัมเบรล่าใหญ่ๆที่ cover ทุกฉบับนะครับแต่ในที่สุดแล้วเนี่ยเราก็แพ้เสียงโหวตในสภานะครับก็คือร่างของไอลอนั้นตกไปนะครับ
And the other issue was the constitution amendment, and we received 7 versions. And of course, the version that we most supported was the one from the public, from ILAW. But eventually, we didn't win the vote, so that version was also aborted.
เหตุการณ์ที่เกิดในสภาที่เกี่ยวกับการแก้ไขร่างรัฐธรรมนูญนี่ก็คือว่าผมเองนี่ลุกขึ้นอภิปรายพร้อมกับคุณไหมกับopposition นะหลายคนนะที่จะบอกว่าโอเคขอให้มีการแก้ไขรัฐธรรมนูญแต่ว่าได้มีการดึงเวลาไปอีก1 เดือนโดยตั้งกันมาธิการศึกษาทั้งที่เรื่องนี้ได้มีการศึกษาไปเรียบร้อยแล้วเพื่อยืดเวลาด้วยเสียงข้างมากของสสรัฐบาล
And so I myself also did debate in this issue. What happened that stopped our attempt was that there was a suggestion to prolong the timeline to found a committee to study this issue, while in fact this issue has already been studied, and this is to prolong and then to win the vote from the government side.
นั่นเป็นเหตุให้ทำให้เกิดความโกรธแค้นกับม็อบและมีม็อบล้อมสภาในวันนั้นนะครับและทุกคนเนี่ยต้องออกมาด้วยความยากลำบากเพราะว่าแต่ถ้าเป็นสสฝ่ายค้านเนี่ยก็จะออกมาด้วยความปลอดภัยแต่ทุกคนที่เป็นสสฝ่ายรัฐบาลรวมทั้งสวเนี่ยก็จะถูกม็อบเนี่ยประณามแล้วก็โจมตีด้วยคำกล่าวว่าต่างๆนานาครับ
And that incident infuriated the public, the student protester, and caused them to come and surround the parliament. That the member of the parliament had to flee. It depends which side you're on, because if you're the opposition party, then you didn't need to. But the government party and the Senate, they had a hard time leaving the venue, and also they were faced with a lot of insults and angry words.
ในวันนั้นผมได้ประกาศว่าการเล่นเกมยืดเวลา1 เดือนนี่เป็นอันตรายมากเพราะว่าจะเกิดเหตุการณ์รุนแรงขึ้นนอกสภาซึ่งเดี๋ยวผมจะพูดต่อไปว่าจะมีเหตุการณ์ที่โยงใยเกี่ยวข้องกับเหตุการณ์ในสภาไปสู่นอกสภาอย่างไรครับ
And I declare in the parliament that day that this attempt, the prolongation, is very dangerous because it infuriates the public and it will lead to dangerous situation outside the parliament. And I will explain later the connections between what's happening inside the parliament and what will lead to the events outside the parliament.
1 เดือนที่ยืดเวลาไปเนี่ยทำให้เกิดม็อบจำนวนมากมายมหาศาลทั่วประเทศแล้วก็เกิดขึ้นมากขึ้นเรื่อยๆ
So this 1 month, the prolonged period of 1 month, causes more protests all over the nation.
จนกระทั่งมีการพิจารณาร่างรัฐธรรมนูญอีกครั้งหนึ่งเมื่อวันที่ 17 พฤศจิกายนครับที่ผ่านมาครับ 17 November.
And there was another attempt to consider the constitutional amendment on November 17.
ในวันนั้นเนี่ยได้มีม็อบหลายหมื่นคนพยายามที่จะไปโปรเทสที่สภาเพราะรู้ว่าอาจจะไม่ผ่านร่างของไอลอ
So there are tens of thousands of protesters demonstrated at the parliament because they fear that the ILAW draft would not pass in the parliament.
ตำรวจได้ทำแบรีเออร์แล้วก็ขวางกั้น ไม่ยอมให้ม็อบเนี่ยผ่านไปที่สภา
And the police set up a barrier stopping the protester to approach the parliament.
แน่นอนว่าม็อบเนี่ยต้องการไปถึงสภาเพื่อจะแสดงจุดยืนไม่ได้คิดว่าจะไปลุกลามหรือเข้าไปในสภาเลยครับ
And of course, the intention of the protester, they wanted to get there to express their position. It was not their intention to trespass, to go inside the parliament.
สิ่งที่เกิดขึ้นคือมันเป็นเรื่องที่น่าตลกขบขันมากก็คือว่าเราจะเห็นว่ามี senators แล้วก็มี MP ฝ่ายรัฐบาลจำนวนมากกำลังแบบหนีตายลงเรือเพราะว่าออกจากทางถนนไม่ได้ครับ
And so the amusing scene that happened on that day is that we saw a lot of senates and also the MPs from the government party try to flee for their lives, taking the boat because they couldn't take the front entrance anymore.
สำหรับผมคุณไหมแล้วก็ opposition ไม่ต้องกลัวเพราะว่าเราก็อยู่จนกระทั่งสภาปิดเพราะว่าเราทำในสิ่งที่ถูกต้องครับ
For me and Kun Srikanya and the rest of the opposition party, we didn't have to flee and actually we stayed until the parliament closed because we stood for the right thing.
เป็นเรื่องน่าตลกขบขันมากเลยที่นายทหารยศในพลทั้งหลายเนี่ยมากกว่าครึ่งสภากลัวเด็กนักเรียนนิสิตนักศึกษาแล้วก็มีความรู้สึกอาการลนลานหนีตายลงเรือซึ่งมันเป็นภาพที่น่าอนาถที่แยกกันลงเรือ
And it is very amusing to see soldiers, to see generals, more than half of the parliament were so agitated and running in fear and trying to jump into the boat and find an escape.
แปลว่าอะไรครับแปลว่าเขารู้อยู่แก่ใจว่าเขากำลังทำสิ่งซึ่งไม่ถูกต้องและแน่นอนว่านักเรียนนิสิตนักศึกษาประชาชนเนี่ยย่อมโกรธเคืองและไม่พอใจเขาอย่างมาก
Why is that? This is because they know that they're not standing for the right thing and that it infuriated the public, the students, and so they are facing with an angry public.
ครับวันนี้เราจะเห็นว่ามีม็อบของนักเรียนนิสิตนักศึกษาประชาชนเนี่ยอยู่ในถนนแล้วก็จะมีไปอีกเรื่อยๆตราบเท่าที่ฝ่ายสวและสสของรัฐบาลยังมีจุดยืนที่ไม่คิดว่าจะช่วยแก้ปัญหาของประเทศชาติ
And so this is where we are left at, that we will see the students protesting on the street increasingly only, and this will continue as long as the Senate and also the government MPs are not doing anything that is for the benefit of the people.
แน่นอนครับว่าทุกท่านผู้มีเกียรติที่นั่งอยู่ในนี้คงจะมีคำถามว่าแล้วเราในฐานะที่เป็น opposition จะสามารถช่วยนักเรียนนิสิตนักศึกษาที่อยู่ในม็อบได้อย่างไรผมขอยืนยันว่าเราช่วยได้แน่นอนครับเพราะว่าอะไรครับเพราะว่าเราใช้เวทีสภาด้วยการอภิปรายช่วยให้อาจจะหยุดกฎหมายได้หลายข้อเช่นนะครับเราไม่เห็นด้วยกับพรบฉุกเฉินครับและไม่เห็นด้วยกับพรบการชุมนุม
And so of course the question here is how do we as an opposition party can support the students? The answer is yes, we can support them. There's a lot we can do in the parliament through the debates. We can stop the bills, for example, the emergency decree and public assembly law, for instance.
โอเคก็คือ emergency decree เนี่ยผมได้คัดค้านตั้งแต่เดือนมีนาคมประมาณ26มีนาคมที่มีการประกาศใช้นะครับแล้วก็คัดค้านมาเรื่อยและเป็นคนยืนยันว่าการใช้ดีกรีเนี่ยของรัฐบาลเนี่ยเป็นไม่ใช่เป็นการสกัดโควิดเลยแต่เป็นการใช้เพื่อจะสกัดม็อบแล้วก็กลั่นแกล้งนักเรียนนิสิตนักศึกษาตั้งข้อกล่าวหาจับกลุ่มดำเนินคดีตลอดเวลา
I have been standing my ground since March 26 that the emergency decree was not a good idea, was not necessary because it was not there to stop the COVID situation, but to open the legal gap to attack the student protest.
แน่นอนว่าวันนี้เนี่ยเราคงต้องเฝ้าติดตามดูการชุมนุมของนักเรียนนิสิต ษาเนี่ยอย่างใกล้ชิดแล้วก็ดูทุกวันเพื่อจะหาทางว่าทำอะไรที่เราทำได้บ้างนะครับช่วยเหลืออะไรได้บ้างสำหรับการชุมนุมนักเรียนนักศึกษาในวันนี้ครับ
And so from today onwards, what we can do is to closely monitor the activities of student protests and see how we can support them in this journey.
โดยสรุปก็คือสำหรับข้อสงสัยข้อกังขาของทุกๆคนของประชาชนรวมทั้งผู้สื่อข่าวด้วยอาจจะยังสงสัยว่าบทบาทของเรายังช่วยนักเรียนนิสิตศึกษาได้หรือเปล่าเนี่ยนะครับผมขอยืนยันว่าเรายังมีบทบาทในสภาและจะใช้เวทีสภาเพื่อพูดดังๆอภิปรายดังๆให้ทั้งโลกได้ยินว่ากำลังเกิดขึ้นอะไรในประเทศไทยและเราจะช่วยเหลือนักเรียนนิสิตนักศึกษาได้อย่างไรครับ
So in short, to that question of the roles of the opposition party and whether we can help the students, the short answer is yes. We will use the parliamentary system and send our voice and our standpoint out to the public and also to the world in order to help the students.
ครับรอบแรกนี้ขอขอบคุณคุณอิทธินัทและคุณพันธ์ครับ
ขอบคุณมากครับ
Thank you, moderator.
ขอบคุณมากครับคุณหมอครับก็เป็นคำตอบที่น่าสนใจในการใช้สภาเป็นเวทีเราอยากจะไป we want to go to our last speaker คุณสุพจน์อาวาส the spokesperson of the ประชาชาติ Party you know one of the questions is that of course we've been talking about what's been happening in Parliament but as opposition what do you guys do outside of Parliament I mean there's also that role as you know the political party the coalition the opposition coalition what have you guys been doing and what is the next step for the opposition ก็อยากจะถามเรื่องเกี่ยวกับบทบาทนอกสภานะครับของทางฝ่ายค้านเอง
So thank you very much for FCCT for inviting me to join this panel. But I will deal with the 8 issues given us to comment upon. But there are too many issues to be dealt with. So I will speak Thai so that the moderator and interpreter can do their work. ก็คำถามที่ผมจะพูดก็คือว่าผมขอยืนยันว่าคือประเด็นที่ให้ไปก็คือกำลังจะบอกว่าพรรคฝ่ายค้านทั้งหมดเนี่ยอยู่ในสภาพของ loose coalition นะครับซึ่งอันเนี้ยผมในฐานะที่เป็นคนหนึ่งที่ช่วยเป็นกลไกอยู่เบื้องหลังเนี่ยขอยืนยันว่าสิ่งที่สังคมเข้าใจเนี่ยไม่จริงครับ1เรามี7 พรรคข้อที่2ตอนนี้เราอยู่6 พรรคแต่การที่เราต้องแยกกันเดินบ้างและร่วมกันตีบ้างอันนี้เป็นกลยุทธ์
So first of all, the question that I received that I should declare is about the status of the opposition party. And people see that the status right now is a loose coalition, but from my experience and involvement, providing support in the back all along, I would say that public perception is not correct. We consist of 7 parties now, 7 parties, and now reduced to 6 parties. And of course, there are sometimes we have to take our separate ways, and then after a while we come back together on certain issues. This is not the breaking point. This is just strategy.
ในประเด็นแรกเนี่ยก็ขอเรียนและก็ยืนยันว่าการขับเคลื่อนของไอลอเราไม่ได้เป็นเจ้าภาพแต่เราก็มีส่วนในการที่จะรับรู้รับฟังแล้วก็มันเป็นสิ่งที่เรายืนยันได้ว่าสิ่งที่เขาทำเนี่ยเป็นส่วนที่เป็นเสียงแล้วก็เป็นความต้องการของประชาชนโดยแท้จริงเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยก่อนวันนี้เราพยายามขับเคลื่อนในเรื่องของพรบประชามติตามที่มีการพูดคุยกันมีการดีเบตกันวันนี้และเราให้ความรู้กับชาวบ้านในเรื่องที่1เรื่องที่2ก็คือตอนนี้เรากำลังให้ความสำคัญทุกพรรคฝ่ายค้านเนี่ยกำลังให้ความสำคัญเรื่องพลเอกประยุทธ์อยู่บ้านสวัสดิการหรือบ้านรับรองของกองทัพ
Okay, the first issue here we can look at is the I-law. And of course, I must say that the constitution draft by I-law was not proposed by us. So So our role is to listen, but also we could confirm that the ILAW constitution version was a reflection of the voice and also the demand of the people. And our attempts before that, we support the referendum act, and we educated the people to have the right understanding of this. And what we're paying special attention right now is the issue of Prime Minister Prayut, that he stayed in the government residence in a military compound.
ข้อที่สองเรายืนยันว่าระบบรัฐสภาเนี่ยเป็นระบบที่ดีแต่ว่าเราไม่สามารถใช้ระบบรัฐสภาได้เพื่อขับเคลื่อนสิ่งต่างๆได้ครบ 100% เพราะที่มาของรัฐธรรมนูญที่มาของนายกแล้วก็ประเด็นอื่นๆที่เกี่ยวข้องที่สาธารณชนให้เห็นเนี่ยทำให้เรารู้กันดีอยู่ว่าทั้งกลไกของรัฐธรรมนูญกฎหมายลูกต่างๆมันเอื้อให้พลเอกประยุทธ์สามารถดำรงตนอยู่ได้ถึงแม้ว่าความละอายจะมีเพียงน้อยนิดแต่สาธารณชนรู้ทั่วกัน
And the second point I'd like to make is that the parliamentary system still works. Even though in this system that I say is working, cannot mobilize everything 100%, but this is due to the origin, how the Prime Minister came to power, and also how some members in the parliament were set up. And this created gridlock and stopped us. So even though there is little shame to be seen over there, this is the reason why we're still struggling in this system.
ข้อที่3ครับเรามีความจำเป็นอย่างยิ่งและจริงๆเป็นเรื่องของธรรมชาติที่จะได้มองเห็นว่าพรรคฝ่ายค้านมีความเห็นและมีมุมมองในแต่ละเรื่องแตกต่างกันไปถึงแม้กระทั่งในบางครั้งในการลงออกเสียงในสภาก็เหมือนกันนะครับทีนี้ต้องเข้าใจว่าเราถูกกระทำให้วิธีการทำงานเรากระเทือนโดยกลไกของรัฐะครับทีนี้เนื่องจากว่าและเรามีความจำเป็นต้องเปลี่ยนหัวเปลี่ยนตัวในการขับเคลื่อนแต่ผมยืนยันว่าในฐานะที่ผมเป็นคนที่ขับเคลื่อนพรรคฝ่ายค้านเพื่อประชาชนเป็นกลไกอยู่ข้างนอกเนี่ยเราพูดกันเป็นหนึ่งเดียวและเป็นเสียงเดียวและทุกครั้งเราจะทำอะไรร่วมกันเนี่ยเรามีการวางแผนเรายังมีการประชุมกันทุกวันจันทร์เพื่อดูว่าสิ่งที่เป็นความต้องการของประชาชนจากเราจากสสเป็นอย่างไรแล้วก็เอาไปเสนอในวิปของฝ่ายค้านเพื่อเจรจาและก็ทำงานต่อกับรัฐบาลในสภา
And this diversity of opinions is only natural, and this reflects the needs of the opposition parties that we have different viewpoints. I have to say also that when we work in this system, we are going against a lot of systemic challenge, that our workflow is affected by the government mechanism, that there were needs to change a lot of key positions on our side. But from my experience, as I drive these movements and I drive these attempts on my own, so I can say that we speak in one voice and we have the working system of planning. We have meeting every Mondays to really reflect what the public wants and what is the standpoint of the opposition party, and we bring that conclusion into the debate in the parliament.
ข้อสุดท้ายเป็นความเป็นส่วนตัวมากๆคือว่าการที่มีการออกเสียงประชามติจะมีในอนาคตจะมีสสรหรือไม่อะไรอย่างไรนี่แล้วแต่กลไกของรัฐสภาที่ตั้งขึ้นแต่การที่ดำเนินการมีคณะกรรมการมาธิการแก้ไขรัฐธรรมนูญเนี่ยสำหรับตัวผมเองเนี่ยผมไม่ได้หวังว่ามันจะเรียบร้อยหรือเป็นไปตามความต้องการของเราทั้งหมดของคนส่วนใหญ่ที่กำลังขับเคลื่อนอยู่เนี่ย 100% แต่อย่างน้อยเนี่ยเราได้แก้บางมาตราที่เราสามารถที่จะแก้ไขได้ถึงแม้ว่าจะไม่สามารถทำได้ให้จบภายในปี 65เราก็คิดว่าความพยายามของฝ่ายค้านและประชาชนก็คงยังดำเนินการอยู่ต่อไปแต่ทำอย่างไรก็ได้ในอนาคตทำให้สวไม่ต้องมาเลือกนายกรัฐมนตรี
And this last point is rather a personal opinion. I think that about the referendum and regardless if we will have the constitution drafting committee in what form or not, I don't expect the results in the end to come out in 100% in line with the demand and also the expectation of the people. And we might change something that we can change for now, but what we can hope for is that maybe this process will not be finished by 2022, but in the end our goal is that we won't be seeing Senate selecting the Prime Minister any longer in the future.
ข้อสุดท้ายครับเรื่องการเคลื่อนไหวของกิจกรรมต่างๆนอกสภาเรื่องหนึ่งก็คือเรื่องไม่ว่าจะมีกลุ่มแคร์หรือกลุ่มใดๆก็ตามหรือแม้แต่การที่เด็กๆน้องๆออกมาประท้วงหรือออกมาเดินขบวนกันเนี่ยครับผมว่ามันเป็นเรื่องที่ดีเพราะว่าแต่ละกลุ่มมีจุดมุ่งหมายอย่างแคร์ต้องการให้ความรู้ต้องการที่จะขับเคลื่อนตั้งประเด็นทางสังคมเพื่อให้เป็นที่ถกเถียงและก็โจทย์จัดการว่าเนี่ยเราไม่สามารถสภาเราจะพึ่งไม่ได้เราต้องประการก็สสที่นั่นตรงนี้นะครับว่ากลไกของสภาอย่างเดียวเนี่ยไม่ได้เพราะเราต้องอาศัยกลไกข้างนอกในการช่วยทีนี้การที่เด็กๆออกมาประท้วงออกมาบนถนนเนี่ยผมคนหนึ่งที่อยู่ทุกการชุมนุมครับแต่เราไปในฐานะผู้สังเกตการณ์เพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยเราจะได้เห็นว่าเด็กๆและน้องๆเนี่ยมีทำงานกันอย่างเป็นระบบอาจจะมีข้อบกพร่องข้อขัดเคลื่อนบ้างในช่วงนี้เพราะเขากำลังหาวิธีการแก้ไขแต่ที่สำคัญก็คือเราชี้นำไม่ได้นะครับและที่สำคัญพูดน้องก็ไม่ฟังนะครับเพราะเขามีทิศทางแนวทางวิธีคิดวิธีการจัดการของเขาเองนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยก็ในฐานะที่เป็นกลไกหนึ่งเล็กๆของพรรคการเมืองเนี่ยผมโดยส่วนตัวก็ให้กำลังใจเราไม่ endorse เขาแต่เราให้กำลังใจแล้วก็จะมีอะไรก็ตามเนี่ยถ้าเราพูดคุยกันได้และเราจะดำเนินการร่วมมือกันได้ในอนาคตอย่างไรก็ยินดีที่จะช่วยเหลือนะครับ
And the last point was about the movement outside the parliament. We have different movements that we can see, for example, the CARE group or the student protest. I think this is a good thing because these different groups of protesters reflect diverse viewpoints and demands of society, and they have their own different mechanisms and functions. For example, the CARE group focuses on educating people and raising awareness on different social issues. And so this is something that we have to count on them. We cannot count just only the parliamentary system alone. Apologies for the member of the parliament. And when I see the student protest on the street, I'm always at every protest myself, but as the observer. And as an observer in those protests, I saw firsthand the systems, how the students work together to drive their agenda. Of course, there are some mistakes, there are some shortcomings, but they're still learning. The important thing is that we don't try to lead them. We don't try to influence them, or even if we try, they won't listen to us anyway. So, as someone involved in the opposition party, I would say that I just watch them. I don't endorse them per se, but I have my goodwill for them, and we all perform our functions.
ขอบคุณมากครับ So, before we go to the questionnaire, I have a question I want to put out to any of you. อยากจะถามคำถามหนึ่งที่ท่านไหนจะตอบไม่ได้นะครับคือเราเห็นใน3-4 เดือนที่ผ่านมา in the past few months we see that the student protest has been pushing some very radical agendas. This includes the reform of the monarchy, amending the entire constitution, etc. I mean, how do you match? How do you link up? All of you mentioned that you monitored the protests, you followed the protests, you listened to their demands, and in fact, in many ways, you can provide a platform for certain things that they're talking about. But how do you link up with such a radical, with such a they shattered the ceiling, those kind of demands? อยากจะถามเรื่องนี้ครับว่าเนี่ยเราจะคีปอัพยังไงกับการข้อเรียกร้องจากผู้ชุมนุมในนอกสภานะครับที่พูดถึงประเด็นที่มันเซนซิทีฟมากอย่างการปฏิรูปสถาบันกษัตริย์ในสังคมไทยท่านไหนจะตอบก็ได้นะครับก่อนที่ผมจะให้คนอื่นถามแล้วแต่
I go first. For Thai Party, we are big party, and we think that monarchy is very important institute for Thailand, and we think that we have to make sure that all the sector, every section of the society acceptable for us, for the idea before we can touch this subject. That's for the party standpoint. But for my personal note, this is personal. Okay, I am also worried about what's going on and how this thing will lead to what happens. But there's also a lot of worry about the asset issue and everything that they're talking. Even the loyalists also worried about this issue. That's what I can tell.
For this particular issue, we talk about this a lot in our party meeting, and we know for sure that we believe in a constitutional monarchy, and we believe that we would like the democracy and monarchy to coexist in Thailand for as long as possible, and we know what basically the demand from the protesters, because we monitor regularly, and I think if the reform is about to improve the relationship between the monarchy and the people, and so I think if it's the way that improvement, we are up for it. But in order for any reforms to be successful, we need to make people to buy in. You know, without people buying, you can issue all the laws and all the reform will not be a success. And so we need, I think we need to create a public dialogue that creates a safe space that people can talk about this taboo subject freely without conviction. And I think Parliament should be like one of the tools or one of the platforms that bring about this kind of safe space. And yeah, so I think the Move Forward Party, it's trying to make the parliamentary system work in this way.
ครับสำหรับคำถามนี้นะฮะคำตอบก็คือจริงๆก็ยืนยันได้จากสิ่งที่ได้ทำไปแล้วนะครับได้โหวตนะฮะเพื่อจะพยายามผ่านร่างของไอลอนะครับเพราะว่าร่างของไอลอเนี่ยจะมีการแก้ไขหมวด 1 และหมวด 2ซึ่งเป็นหมวดของพระมหากษัตริย์นะฮะเพราะฉะนั้นนั่นก็คือแสดงจุดยืนให้เห็นว่าเราก็อยากจะให้มีการรีฟอร์มนะฮะเพราะว่าเราเชื่อว่าการรีฟอร์มเนี่ยจะทำให้สถาบันมีความมั่นคงสถาพรและเป็นที่พึ่งเป็นศูนย์รวมของประชาชนได้นั่นคือจุดยืนเลยนะครับขอบคุณครับ
So for this question, my standpoint can be confirmed from my previous actions that I voted trying to pass the I-law constitution version. And this I-law version is the one that focused on the Article 1 and 2. This is the articles about the monarchy itself. And so my personal view is that this reform will bless the monarchy with stability and make them function better as a center of the nation.
I think the discussion on the said issue need to be redealt with again in the parliament, but maybe not this time, but next time it can be possible. It's not too late at all. It depends on the subcommittee decision.
All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for answering that question. With that, I turn to the floor. I guess if any of you have any questions, please, there's a microphone in the middle of the room there. Just identify yourself, your affiliate, and also ask your question. Just remember that FCCT is a safe space too, and we value freedom of expression. So please go ahead. And for those of you at home watching on the Facebook Live, feel free to send in the comments, and then we'll try our best to get all the questions. Gwen, you want to take slide?
Hello, Gwen Robinson, FCCT President. Sorry if I missed this, but and maybe some of you brought it up, but I didn't quite get it very clearly about the prospects for greater unity amongst the opposition parties in Parliament. Have there been any concrete steps in recent weeks, apart from your discussions about the constitutional amendment? Are there other signs that there could be more opposition coordination and unity, even a coalition? Oh yes, sorry, that is to everyone, but maybe we could start with
With the unity among the opposition party? Oh, I think we do have a very good cooperation. In fact, every week, every Monday, we meet with representatives of all the opposition party, and we discuss it, and we also have the press release, and also we give interview together every week. I don't see any problem at all. How can you have problem with people who look like this? No, it's not my nature. So it's just so we don't. Well, of course, you have to realize the fact that Thai and Future Forward may have strong basis of the border, but we don't. For Thai, we think we're gonna take water from Palang Pracharat more than we can take water from the Future Forward. That's our goal, my opinion.
Yes, of course. A few weeks from now on, we will have the deliberation of the constitutional amendment of Section 256, and we have to discuss a lot about the constitution drafting assembly. That there are two different models. That one proposed by the government MPs, and the one proposed by opposition. I mean, the Thai opposition, except Forward Party. Draft. So we have to discuss about this, and we think this is going to be the milestone that to see if we can unify along with the opposition or not. Because I think for our own model, it's a little bit different from Pheu Thai's model also for the Constitution Drafting Assembly. But if you want to get this to be agreed upon in the deliberating committee, we need to be unified somewhat. So we are on the process of negotiating and everything, and so we will see.
ขออนุญาตครับครับผมชอบคำถามของคุณเกวนมากครับคือกำลังอยากจะบอกว่าอย่างนี้ครับว่ามันน่าจะเป็นวิธีทางปกติใช่ไหมครับในเดโมคราซีเนี่ยแม้ว่าพรรคร่วมฝ่ายค้านเนี่ยจะมีความเห็นต่างกันบ้างนี่เป็นเรื่องธรรมดาต่างคนต่างก็อาจจะแล้วแต่ว่าเป็นประเด็นอะไรบางทีก็อาจจะร่วมกันบางทีอาจจะมีความเห็นต่างนี่มันเป็นวิธีทางปกติแล้วก็น่าจะสวยงามในระบบเดโมคราซีแล้วก็เช่นวันนี้เนี่ยเราอาจจะต้องร่วมมือกันในเรื่องของการ pass ไอ้ตัว constitution แต่ว่านี่อีกไม่กี่วันข้างหน้าจะมีการเลือกตั้งท้องถิ่นใช่ไหมครับแน่นอนว่าพรรคเพื่อไทยกับก้าวไกลอาจจะต้องต่อสู้กันแต่นี่ก็เป็นเรื่องปกติธรรมดาไม่ได้ผิดปกติอะไรเลยบังเอิญผมอาจจะไม่ได้เป็นผู้กรณีเพราะว่าทางพรรคไม่ได้ส่งการเมืองท้องถิ่นนะครับขอบคุณครับ
So I like this question from Gwen very much. I think this is a normal practice in democracy that even though we are in the opposition coalition, but we can have different viewpoints. We can agree on some issues and disagree on some issues, but we can coexist together, and this is the beauty of democracy of this system. For example, today we have to work together to passing this constitutional amendment issue, but also the local election is coming up, and maybe our parties will fight against each other in those elections. So this is nature and beauty.
So, thank you, Ms. Robinson. This is not a rumor. This is the fact that lots of loose cooperation within the government parties as well. Particularly, every one of them, every party, have sent their representative candidate for the local election. So now it can be seen easily. Even I'm living in the south of Thailand. You see, lots of every party send their candidates, and now every party wants their own candidate to be win. So why don't you raise this issue for the government parties as well?
Thank you ครับ
Thank you. Thank you.
อาจารย์ครับ
Chris Baker. I want to ask Kunpanu's question again, because I thought some of your answers were not so clear. I'm going to be very rude, in fact, and ask it again. I was very warm that all four of the speakers gave support to the students on the street. And of course, they have raised some very important questions, particularly about the monarchy. So I want to ask very directly, do you think that the Parliament should debate these issues?
น่าสนใจอาจารย์คริสนะครับว่าคิดว่าทางสภาจะดีเบตในเรื่องเกี่ยวกับการปฏิรูปสถาบันแล้วแต่ไม่ใช่เป็นต้องตามคิวแล้วแต่ใครผู้วิจัยก่อนเลยครับ
Yeah, this issue, I think we're gonna have the constitution drafting committee coming out soon, and I think the committee will discuss this matter. That should be the job of the constitution drafting, the new constitution drafting, which I hope it will come from all elected. But the government tries to say that they need to select 50 out of 200, which is I don't think the idea is acceptable for me. I think we should have 200 people from elected. And I think after we have the committee set up, then this issue should be discussed in the constitution drafting amendment on this issue. I think that's my opinion.
My answer is yes, and we've tried several times. And if you follow the broadcasting, you will see that we were blocked by the chairman, the president of the parliament from time to time, that we cannot directly talk about the monarchy or the king from time to time. And but we think that it's even if the parliament could not be the safe space for the MPs to speak out about these topics, nowhere else we could speak about. And I know that the convention of 500 people will be a little bit difficult to run this kind of topic. We can do this in our standing committee. We can propose it to have the ad hoc committee for this particularly issues. Because what we lack nowadays is that we lack a platform that we can talk, that we can debate based on evidence, based on facts, based on what's going on in the street is like one-way communication, and we cannot get enough of the details and stuff. And from the other side, we could not find that they provide enough evidence of what they have debated on the television. So I think we should and we must make the parliament be a safe space for the people to talk about this topic. Thank you.
ขออนุญาตครับ
ครับหมอ
ครับคำตอบก็คือว่าเราได้ดีเบตเรื่องนี้ในสภานะครับสสได้ดีเบตเรื่องนี้ในสภาแต่อย่างนี้ครับถามว่าจะรีฟอร์มได้มากน้อยแค่ไหนเนี่ยมันจะไปอยู่ในดีเทลตอนที่ตั้งสสร200 คนตรงนั้นนะครับมันจะมีดีเทลว่าโอเคต้องรีฟอร์มอะไรอย่างไรบ้างที่เกี่ยวกับโมนาทีก็เป็นคำตอบ
So my answer would be that we did debate about this issue in the Parliament. A member of the Parliament instituted that, but the details of how much of a reform and in what form it would take place, that will have to be with the Constitution Amendment Committee, the 200 members in that committee. We will see the details then.
I am sure that this issue later will be dealt with properly by the Constitution Drafting Committee because all involved got hurt. They got hurt. Instead of letting students of the pro-democracy protester yelling out on the street, they should be brought into the parliament properly. And then, now I have to confess that people are divided now. So I think, I'm sure one day there will be someone or somebody who understand this, that it's a very delicate issue. I know that we cannot talk about it publicly, but Parliament is a set place to do so. Otherwise, I don't want to go to jail like Unpichar, 8 times because that's enough for him. But I don't even want one. Thank you.
Yes, hello. I'm Philip Sherwell. I'm a correspondent for the London Sunday Times. Thank you all for your contributions. Mainly a question for Kun Pichai, although I'd be happy to hear the other comments. You've all talked about the importance of the protests and how the protesters are driving so much of what's going on in this country now. We're in rare, uncharted territory, as Panu said. The protesters at the moment are predominantly probably from a demographic that's supported Future Forward at the last election. And there's been quite a lot of interest in how much support the red shirts might add to these protests. Now, I appreciate Pertai and the red shirts are not one and the same, but Pertai also has a rare ability financially and logistically, their MPs, your MPs, to mobilise a lot of red shirt protesters who've historically come to Bangkok for protests. What would do you think it would take to bring out red shirts en masse again? Certainly we've seen at Sanam Luang there have been red shirt protesters there, but this has predominantly not been obviously a red shirt issue. Would you like to see them back on the streets? Would you like them to be protesting again? And for your party, who as I say has this strong connection with that ground movement, what would you like to mobilise them, and what would cause you to mobilise them?
Well, to be honest, the red shirt movement have been fighting for this for a long time, and Thai party didn't support. I mean financially or whatever, we didn't support them to come to the demonstration, but they do come by themselves. That's the truth. Even they think that American is behind them all. If you go and believe it or not, a lot of people still believe that American is behind the scene for this movement, and I'm so surprised that even people that don't like the demonstration also believe that US are supporting, and people who like the demonstration also US is supporting. So it's very strange that why they think. And I met with the US diplomat and asked them, frankly, hey, they say that you are supporting the demonstration, and they asked me back, do you think Mr. Trump care? And that's probably the good answer. But anyway, the government tried to say that, oh, this movement is support by American, not by students themselves, because they try to convince themselves that once the American not support them, the student may dry up, which is their wishful thinking, which is not going to happen. But on the other side, the people who support the demonstration think that, okay, if US support them, the Thai government will go down for sure, because US have a track record of breaking down many governments in the past. So that's why they try to convince themselves on both parts. But the truth is, for Thai party, we do support in terms of mentally, and we always want the people to come out. As I say, I'm happy that the students come out, and I'm happy that the lecturer joining the student to come out. But ask if whether Thai party supporting or not. We support morally, but we didn't support them financially. That's the answer. And then we wish them to be successful. When we send our MP, a group of MP, to watch over them, try to protect them. If they have been arrested, we send MP to bail them out. And that's our action. And every time they have demonstration, we will have a tent and our MP go and protect the right of demonstration. That is our goal. Yeah, thank you. I hope that's good answer enough.
That's pretty good.
Right.
Yeah, I also have a couple of questions that are coming from Facebook, but I would also actually, I think I'll ask this question. I was waiting for someone to ask it, and again, sorry, it's to Kun Chai. Actually, you've had tremendous changes in the leadership of Pheu Thai lately. Actually, several sets. And in fact, yesterday was a big one. So, in fact, I think it has got a lot of implications if tomorrow's ruling on the Prime Minister's use of military housing does actually unbelievably see him disqualified, which is highly unlikely. But your former leader is actually on the list of potential candidates for a replacement Prime Minister. So it seems very significant that she has now resigned the party. But I wonder if you could enlighten us about the leadership of Pheu Thai and what all these changes mean, and particularly what yesterday's resignations meant, and how you feel it changes the leadership of the party and possibly the direction. Thanks. Just an easy little question.
I try to find appropriate answer.
Oh, you got it written out.
I cannot find it.
You can email it to us.
Kidding. We are a little bit surprised of what the action happened, but we respect the decision. Every decision is personal. I think the decision is personal, and we wish her well, and I think in every political party, that people come in and come out, that is normal. And then we respect the decision, and then we hope that there are saying say that the tree, even with the strongest root, leaf keep changing. So when the leaf change, we growing new leaves, and that's what the answer will be. Thank you. And on regarding of the issue of the housings of the government, our Secretary General of the party is the one who raised up this question to the Speaker, and then it become a big matter, because if you're talking about the truth about this matter, the Prime Minister, he's retired from the military for a long time. He's no longer eligible to stay in the housing of the military housing. So in doing so, I think he evaded the law that prevent the Prime Minister or any official to accept the benefit more than 3,000 baht, which is against the law. If you recall, our former Prime Minister, Samak Sintharavet, he going to the TV station, doing cooking, and then he get sacked from his position from cooking show, and this is even worse than that. So, and also the Prime Minister is also a Minister of Defense too. So, when he using housing, military housing, it means like he also have conflict of interest of abusing his power of using the housing. So we hope that tomorrow ruling we'll see what happens. If it happens that the PM have to step down, it's also good. But if it happens that the court may found him not guilty, then it's also good because people will think what happened. The knowledge will be there. And for me, I'm favoring the PM to be sacked out. At least it will solve Thailand political and economic problem on both ways. Because if he gets sacked, then the student may have no reason to demonstrate, right? So the demonstration will cool down. The political, otherwise, then it will cool down the political tension in Thailand. And also economic-wise, as I told you earlier, the investment to Thailand, trust and confidence in Thailand has been dry up for 6 years. So if changing the Prime Minister may bring up trust and confidence of Thailand, I hope so. That's what I expect. And besides, we have a lot of people in Thailand. You may find it funny, but it's the truth. We talk about astrology. you may think that's funny, but in Thailand, sometimes it's self-prophecy. Everybody take astrology into their own consideration, because people do according to astrology. Whether you believe it or not, I have my professor, who is also a former Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Dr. Virapong Ramakul. He's a dean when I study, and we continue to be friends later on. Anyway, 4 years ago, he told me he also economist, and also political science, and he also astrology too. So he told me that, Pishai, he said, hey, in 2020, this is like 4 years ago, he said, in 2020, the alignment of the star will be the same as 1932. I said, hey, if something will happen, really, he told me 4 years ago, gee, you have to wait 4 years? Is it that long? Well, I said, hey, that's the way it is. It's going to last about 3 years. 2020, 2021, 2022. That's what he told me. So I said, well, as the people who believe in science, so I don't believe so. Anyway, beginning of the year, January, February, students come out in numbers. I said, gee, maybe something is really happened, and then continue turbulence, right? And they say that this Christmas probably will be the most turbulent time. That's what they say. I don't know. They said it's gonna last like 2 to 3 months. If it's right, then he's right. If it's wrong, then I'm not wrong. He's wrong. I only deliver the message. I said the alignment is different, even different from 1932, because in 1932 the elite star is still very powerful, but in this year the people star are more powerful than the elite star. That's what they say.
Thank you.
Believe it or not, this is another science that we share. we can discuss this next year, or maybe 6 months later, in this FCCT.
Okay, we'll invite you back in a year. But but to follow up, reflecting the theme of change with Phua Thai, would you expect all these changes to result in any change of policy or direction for Phua Thai, or you think these are just superficial changes that won't change the direction of the party or policies?
Phua Thai, we stand firm on democracy, and we will insist on that. Nothing changed. I believe that we will be stronger, better, and we will gain a lot of vote more. And sorry to say that we may take a lot of vote from future forward. And but mainly, because Parliamentary have maybe 110 and 20 MP, we intending to take the border more than the future forward.
Right.
So we are just kidding when I try to take the MP from the list.
Okay, there's a challenge. Thanks. And just to ask a question that's come over Facebook from a viewer who wishes to remain anonymous, and maybe I can direct this to the other panelists. What do you think will happen concerning the youth movement? You've already answered, Khun Vichai, about your thoughts on the case against Prime Minister Prayut. But I think there's a general question about what, as parliamentary opposition, you feel about where the youth movement is going to take the protests on the streets, particularly in terms of monarchy reform, or will the movement just die, run out of steam? Very short view on that from each of you.
I think there are like two scenarios on this. I think one would be that the movement demanding the movement's stand be accepted by the ruling people, and then there will be like slowly dissolved, and everything will be fine again, which is really less likely to be. And the other way around is that there's some escalation of the violence from the movement. I mean, I don't mean from the youth movement, but it could be like from the other side of the movements also. That escalating the violence using more and more to create the atmosphere of rioting and everything. And that's not gonna end up well. But for both scenarios, if it happens, I think what the youth movement has been achieved already is that they already shattered the ceilings that of the debate already. That we have come so far from like 2 years ago. No one would imagine what would happen like today in Thailand, right? And I think they have already marked a pretty crucial milestone for Thai society that we could, talking about taboo topics right now, and I think it's going to be like a gradual process of change towards something that because change cannot be without society's consensus, right? So it's going to take some time. Probably there will be the uprising and the violence, or the mob will die out eventually. But they already made the milestone for Thai society already.
Can I make some more comment? I think for the Thai society, the root cause of the problems are the point of views between generations. New generation has many database and informations, can easily reach them digitally. While for the old generation, and not for you, right? I mean, in the Thai society, not for the guests here, okay? Mainly consider them as disruptive technology and unlimited by the availability of the database and information. The way both of them are thinking are totally different. New generation mostly take actions upon fact, but old generation take actions upon belief. I think these two ideas between fact and belief can absolutely create big conflict and fight. Thank you.
My comments concerning the pro-democracy protester is now anyway tomorrow 3 p.m. in front of the in Lad Prao intersection. The two issues will be dealt with very openly again. And then I would cordially invited you there to see what's happening. And I can assure you that the movements are being reorganized. They are so clever. And they have their own plan what to do. But some plan will be abruptly taken, well organized by their own management team. So I'll make sure that they will never die out. I agree with Dr. Sirikanya that things will be escalated. Okay, I'm sure. And tomorrow I'm going to be there. Thank you.
Any more questions? If not, I have a quick follow-up from myself. I mean, you mentioned all of you about the future of the movement. There's several possibilities, and I mean, the prospect of violence is forever there because of Thai history. We've seen it from time to time where we have different opposing sides on the streets, we have violent clashes, and we have military coups. In the case of a military coups, as opposition, what are you guys going to do? What can you do if this happens again, like in 2014?
As the party who get coup the most since Thai Rak Thai and Pheu Thai and the same coup during Palang Prachachon. Well, we believe that if and when there is a coup again, I don't think it's going to be easy this time because the demonstration that are there, they realize that that's not going to solve the problem. In fact, they increase more problem. In fact, I'm a writer and economist for the newspaper, also for economic, and then also before the year 2014, when they had the coup. Yeah, I write it and say that it's going to be bad, everything's going to falling apart, economy is going to be bad, trust and confidence is going to fall apart. But people doesn't believe. But if they're looking back on my comment before the coup, and I expect the coup because the collaboration between the demonstrator and retaliator is obvious, and it shows later on is so obvious. So anyway. We believe that if and when there's coup, then it wouldn't end well, and it will be more and more turbulence. And as for the Thai party, we will try to resist every way we can in this issue.
I would say that we will defend democracy and the parliament as to protect the legislative power branches. And I have to refer him, we talked about this, and this is what he told the would-be MP at the time, that once we have the coup, we must reconvene at the parliament and work as usual, as business as usual. Just to show that the parliament's the legislative power still there and resist those outlaw power, and we weren't afraid and we would fight back.
Anyone else? Oh, sir, do you want to ask some questions?
Yes, thank you. Peter Metcalf, member of the club, formerly from UNDP. My question actually is very closely related to the one you just asked. I think there's a lot of more focus on the role of the monarchy, but to me the role of the military is perhaps even more important. And you've just been talking about coups and how you might or might not react if there were a coup. But my question would be more how, from an institutional point of view, you as members of Parliament and members of the opposition, as it happens, would try to build institutions so that in the long term the Thai democracy has a proper control of the military. Because democracies that don't control the military are in some ways democracies only in name. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, frankly speaking, I believe this, right now, Thailand is in turbulent stage. And I think after this chaos passes, we must do what you said. It's no more coup now. I don't think it's proven that coup only make things worse. And we will try to do everything to separate military from the politics. We have to be sure of that. But one process of doing that, we need to take a lot of process. But we believe that things are coming. I think that majority of the people knowing now, and in the old time they used the IO, of the military, try to blame government and try to create a condition for them to do the coup. But most of the Thai sometimes they only brainwash only on the elite part, because the low income people may have a lot of people, but they don't have strength to resist. But now I think everybody in every sector of the society realize that coup is the bad thing that happened to Thailand, and military should stay away from the politics. And I think with the punishment they're facing now, economic problem and everything that they are facing now, I think they will realize that it's time for a change, and it will be a permanent change. That's what my opinion.
Of course, the military reform is the policy that we did during the election, the last election, and what we have done so far, some are successful, some are not, is that we pay a lot of attention to the Ministry of Defense budget, and we dig a lot, and we found a lot of suspicious and if we can claim that the submarine is drowned, because what we have been trying in the committee and the subcommittee also. And further, that we have investigated about the budget. There are a lot of off budget of the military that I think it's the source of money that they can do a lot of things and build a lot of their power too. And then that's what we are trying to reform. And the third one is the end of conscription bill, that this was just avoided by the decision of the Prime Minister without stating any reasons to us why he aborted our bill, but we will resubmit it. And the next step is to reform the Defense Council that have the power to determine the budget, the laws regarding the military system and everything. They have higher power than the government, because there are only 1 or 2 seats from the government, from the civilian. And the rest, 20-something people inside the Defense Council, will be like those from the army. So we want to reform this also. And because what we believe is the civilian government should be over the military.
Yeah, I think everybody realizes that the military is the big problem of the Thai politics, and that's why we should reform constitution. And I think we should focus at the many problems as well, like economic inequality, unfair justice system, education reform, something like that. And finally, eventually, the Prime Minister must decide. Thank you.
Okay, hi. Hi, my name is Mike.
Last question.
Yes, this is the last question because Gwen just told me about that. It was just exactly what you were just talking about. I am Mike from Google News Initiative. So my question is about education reform because we've been talking a lot tonight about monarchy reform, but the movement of the students today was that in the public schools they wanted to wear, just not to wear uniform, and there's also a lot of issues, and there's been like one of the top issues that the protesters bring when they go on stage to protest. So my question is, any of you can answer this question, is what is your standpoint? What's your point of view in education reform? I can see that you speak English very well. You probably have higher education, but unfortunately, not all of the students, including myself, if I'm not fortunate enough to receive a government scholarship, I would not be studying in the U.S. So my question would be, what is your point in education reform, and what would you tell these protesters of how would you ensure that their future of education is in their hands?
This is very important. If you recall, Per Thai Party, the one who initiated one tablet per child. In fact, this is the turning point of the education reform. But unfortunately, the person who handles it might not do as good, and then it doesn't have the point of view of how to give the free Wi-Fi and such and such. But we realize this is the problem. Even in the World Economic Forum, Thailand education has been a big problem for a long time. Latest information, we are ranking number 89 of the 100 countries on speaking English. This is very, very bad. I try to initiate the idea of put English as a second language for Thailand. This is my personal idea. We try to push it. Like when you go into the government, and then we try to initiate the idea of having dual language, Thai and English, so that to push Thai people to study more English. That's what I want to see. And then talking about this, I also talking about the recommendation from the 5 ambassadors. U.S. ambassador, UK ambassador, Japan ambassador, Australia ambassador, and German ambassador recommend 10 points that to solve Thai problem on many issues. And then one of the German ambassador speaking very well on critical thinking. I think Thai people lack of critical thinking, and they always a lot of Thai using fallacy, try to convince people in a very irrational reason. That's a big problem. And we try to encourage the critical thinking for Thailand. And I would like to see the completely changing of education reform, like you say. And we try to do our best. Right now, in Per Thai, we drafting the new policy now. We are ready for the new election at any time now. So one of the key is the education reform, and we try to see in which way reform. Talking back about tablet per child, this idea is 12 years ago. In fact, I'm the one who initiated this because I read in the news about Sweden become the most competitive country at that time, about maybe 12 years ago, probably 10 years ago. And they say, hey, and they say that the reason Sweden become the most competitive because 7 years old, they're all computer illiteracy, 100%. 3 years old, among 3-year-old children, 50% they can use computer. So that's why I say, hey, why not? So we should, and then suddenly the price of the tablet coming down, it's only like 2,000-3,000 baht. So I think it's best to keep out. Yeah, but the way they handle the policy may not be as good. And then after the coup, then they ban this policy. And then the Minister of Education tried to bring up this policy back, but they get attacked within the party that, oh, using the per-Thai policy, they not accept it, but in fact it's for the good of the country, not because of this policy. That's what we want to see. And we will try to bring technology back. And we also have the idea of the digitalization of the whole country of Thailand. We use Estonia as the model of the country. Many of you may know or not know. Estonia is separated from Russia about 20 years ago. And at that time, they are so poor. Their revenue, I think, the GDP per capita is like 7,000 baht per month. Okay. And after that, after 20 years, after the reform, they use the digitalization. The GDP per capita grow by 8 times, 53,000 baht per month per person, which is very impressive. And we try to see if Thailand, we will initiate this policy into Thai, and then it also solves the recommendation of the 5 ambassadors that give us the 10 point of collection, because it's also about custom, and if we digitalize, then we can bypass all the tedious format and everything. So we know that the government, they allow people, the official, to tackle money from the investor. I'm sorry if I speak wrong, but I need to tell the public that, I have my friend who complained to me about company like Kellogg, the cereal maker. They have problem. They have been importing the raw material for 20 years. And suddenly, I think the people from Minister of Agriculture said that, hey, this product, this raw material contain corn. We are no longer allowed you to bring in. So they say, hey, we've been importing for 10 to 20 years. What happened? And they say, oh, we have to go past through this. In fact, they want to ask for money. They want to ask for bribery. So they keep asking many people. I have a lot of friends calling me. And at the end, they happen to contact with General Payut and solve the problem. Even this small thing, they come a long way to Prime Minister to solve this, which is very bad. That's my opinion. So that's my idea.
Just a quick follow-up. A lot of protesters, a lot of students been coming and talking to me because I'm also a teacher myself, and a lot of them say that the issues that they concern is about the relationship between teacher and students. A lot of harassment in school happen from the teacher, from the power and authority in the schools, that the teachers, the teachers is right in everything, and the students have to listen and follow everything that teachers say. Maybe if, in your opinion, as an opposition party, would that be something that would be included in the education reform as well, to reform the relationship between teacher and students, so then they can actually be, and they still feel safe, they feel like school is a place that they can talk, they can express their opinion, and they can learn without having fear of being teacher harass them.
Of course.
Maybe I answer quickly so that they can go on and have to come back to me. So the truth about Thailand, let me tell you. My generation, children later on, the smart people, we go study medical doctor. That's why Thai healthcare is quite superb, because all the smart people, even when I was young, I want to be doctor. I studied hard, and my dad said, hey, somebody has to do business, so I have to go study economics instead and become minister. Sadly, I would rather be a doctor so that I don't get detained 8 times. Anyway, another contradiction is the smart people go study as a medical doctor, the stupid people study teacher. I'm sorry, the people who cannot study anything, they go study as a teacher. And this is the structure of Thailand. This is the truth though. I'm here to say this to the teacher, but this is the fact. People, the ranking of the when you go to entrance exam, smart people go to medical doctor. The lowest grade go to education, and that's why problem with the education reform in Thailand. We need to try to find a way. That's why we think about tablet, because you bypass the teacher. You just use the technology to help. Teacher is only maybe moderator to help them connect with the tablet and the cloud, whatever, cloud education. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Sorry. I will be brief. Okay. We know that inside the protests, what they talk about a lot among the high school students is authoritarianism in schools. And before we know this kind of problem, but it's not in our spotlight before. And now that we learned that there are a lot of this kind of problem going on, so we already have 4 bills about education in the pockets. And of course, we will address this authoritarianism inside schools also, and a lot of regulations to be fixed just in order that teachers cannot abuse their power over students, and that students can create, reach their potential with their creativity and stuff, right? But talking about education reform, if the output of the society is students today, it's not that bad, right? But still, they still have a lot more potential to reach. And it's surprisingly that they can create the link between their everyday life, like life in their schools, with the structure that has been, abused and distorted, the authoritarian regime that, that ruled us for a long time. So, I myself, study in public schools for all my life, and I first studied English when I was in 5th grade. And I know for sure that inequality in the school quality is so much deep in Thailand. So we have to improve the laws and regulation, and then we have to reduce inequality. So we have to invest more in the rural area schools. And last is that to improve the quality of the teacher. Human rights to be put in the teacher's curriculum for sure, so that they can, understand more. Because I know for sure that students understand this kind of topic more thoroughly than the teacher already nowadays. Thank you.
Talking about the education system in Thailand, really upsetting, not really good. Really upsetting. So what we need most is real democracy, not the government from dictators. Anyway, we have to reform the education system, and I hope that the future of Thailand, based on Gen Z, these issues need to be seriously looked at. Education reform, freedom of school clothing and hairstyle. Clothing and hairstyle. Now, they are, like a disruption mob, and do something new. So, I have hope, still hope. Hopefully. Thank you.
On that note, I guess, we will bring this panel to an end. Well, on behalf of the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand Board, I would like to thank all of our panelists for coming today and really talk to us about all these different political issues of the day. And also, I would like to thank all the people that asked questions.
Can I say,
Sure.
maybe a few minutes. If you're looking back to Thailand prospered because if you look back into the Vietnam War era, we are able to fight with communism. So Thailand are free from communism, while Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam become communist. So when we have been capitalism, then we are able to attract more commercial and investment. So Thailand prospered for so many years, and we surpassed our neighboring country. And right now, the reason we are able to do that because we get government and the institute and the U.S. government to help making all IO and everything to protect us from becoming communism. Anyway, by doing that, at this moment we are like paying back time. Our country is nobody except us now. All investment go to neighboring country. We have to find a way to end this problem. We have to come back and be acceptable to the international community. Otherwise, then Thailand will face big time. So I would believe that we have 1 or 2 years to clean up our house. I mean, to clean up Thailand to be able to come back and be acceptable to the international community. Otherwise, then I see the COVID as a helper for Thailand. You know why? Because when you have COVID, every country stands still. Thailand, even without COVID, Thailand is also going to go down. So right now, like every country is waiting for Thailand. So we need maybe 1 or 2 years before every other country can revive from COVID. So we have maybe 1 or 2 years to clean up and come back into the international arena and become competitive. We want to be like Singapore, always competitive. Yeah. So, by the way, I have one remarkable sentence from Minister Isavalan of Singapore. I met him 10 years ago. Yeah, we talked about Thailand and Singapore. And Mr. Isavalan is a very wise, very smart person. I think he drafting the strategy for Singapore last 2 years. And I asked him, what do you think of Thailand's governance? And he gave very good answer. He said that Singapore cannot afford mistake like Thailand. Because if Singapore make mistake like Thailand, Singapore will be gone. The country will probably be taken over by Malaysia and whatever. So I want Thai people to think that way too, because we make so many mistakes now, and then it's about time that we have to do the right thing as Singapore, because they do all the right thing. That's why their GDP per capita is 6, 7, or 8 times more than Thailand. And that's the remark I want to say. Thank you so much.
And as I used to work at the Ministry of Education, those big bosses are observer. They are all graduated from overseas. But when they go there and work at the ministry, it seems like the Ministry of Education is a graveyard for both students, parents, and the ministers. Because nearly 60% of the budget and activities are now being focused upon those administration things, but not the students. So we have to have the Ministry of Education reformed. Thank you.
Okay. Prayut must get out tomorrow.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for all of you for contributing tonight, and thank you everyone for listening and coming. And of course, lastly, if you enjoy this kind of discussion, as I always say, please sign up for our membership. There will be more events like this. And as I've stressed many times, that FCCT is the space for freedom of expression and free speech. Thank you very much.